All right, I'm going to quickly cut across to Gaurav Bhatia joining us. More details on that. Gaurav, we're looking at this American social media giant which has huge presence in India, very prompt to comply with the US rules. But when it comes to Indian rules, they're hesitating. And now you have Ravi Shankar Prasad, the IT minister's Twitter account that they've cut access to. Eventually, later on, allowed access, only not before issuing a warning. What do you think is going on here? Is it a deliberate attempt to try and not comply with the rules and eventually try and evade the law here?
At the very outset, it shows the hypocrisy of Twitter, and it also shows how they are maintaining double standards. It also vindicates the stand of our government that if you have to operate in India, you have to comply with the law of the land. And it is so strange that they are complying with the law of another country when they are actually dealing with a person who has his account in India. So, yet again, Twitter has shown that it needs to be tamed, it needs to comply with the law of the country, and this action is definitely an action out of vindictiveness and will not go unpunished and unnoticed.
Well, we're of course wanting to know what the status with regards to compliance here is. In fact, well questioned very recently over a case of fake news that was uploaded or that was on Twitter platforms. The MD was pulled up and he just recently got relief from Karnataka High Court. He claims that he has nothing to do with it because he's only an employee there. And they're completely disconnected with the Twitter platform that is owned by a company in the United States. So there are two different entities, but they somehow want to try and escape the law. It seems like the entire platform is designed so that they do not have to comply with the law of the land.
See, there are a lot of things that Twitter needs to answer. And first of all, there are two different matters. One is compliance of the intermediary rules, which is a statutory obligation of the company if they wish to operate in India. Second is the other incident where an account holder was disseminating information which could have incited people, and thus an FIR was registered. Now, they have lost the protection of an intermediary because they have not complied. And thus an FIR was registered against Twitter as an entity. They got an interim order, but the real issue still remains. And that is why in both these cases, appropriate action as per law will be taken. But you cannot fiddle and play with the accounts of the Vice President of India and now the IT minister. It only shows that there are no checks and balances and transparency as a policy matter in your company.
Gaurav, here we're looking at the IT minister's account that was blocked. Any particular action that the government is mulling over taking with this regard?
This doesn't fall in my domain, but I can tell you that the government has the might of 135 crore Indians behind it, and nobody would be allowed to evade the process of law in our country.
Speaking of selective crackdown, it appears that Twitter is very selective on which tweets that it has to flag off and which it must not touch. Any word on that? And has Twitter responded to that while those allegations were raised?
To that, I would only say that the basic foundation of our democracy rests on the pillars of equality, of non-arbitrariness, and everything that Twitter has been doing in India is arbitrary, is non-transparent. And thus, when being an intermediary that you claim, you start taking sides with a particular ideology, or you start targeting people from another ideology, it is not acceptable in our country. We are a country governed by rule of law, not a banana republic. You may do it in another country and get away with it, but it will not happen in India.
Right, Gaurav Bhatia, thank you very much for